Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Big weekend of racing. Tyler Reddick was too tough to tame. A championship statement by 2311. IMSA Mobil won 12 hours of Sebring. Saw Penske Porsche being perfect all race long. Can't anyone stop them? Plus, MotoGP, Aprilia proves they're the real deal. And Formula E, teammate drama with Jaguar. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. I'm Joe Sammiego, and with me we have Kobe Lameth from Grid Tonight and Matthew Bro from gridnetwork.com. A big thank you to our Patreon investors: Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Nico, Crystal, and our newest member, Gloria. Thank you all so much for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. Without them, we won't be able to pay the bills. We're trying to get more folks to the track in NASCAR, IndyCar, especially American-based motorsports, but we love to someday cover international motorsports as well. And of course, one-time investments through through YouTube Super Chats. Buy me a coffee. Jason leads the leaderboard with 3. And follow us across social media. Grid Network TV across social media, and you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. And Matthew, we just found out, just as we went on the air, for the Cup Series, tech is complete, no issues. Tyler Reddick, the winner, Cindric and Jose R cars are going to the R&D Center, and we'll start off with Darlington just being too tough to tame for everybody, but 3 drivers looked really good. Brad Keselowski, number 6, considering what he's been through with the offseason, broken leg and everything, super great car. I mean, was up front. Carson Hocevar, fastest Chevrolet, strong car, utilized pit stops, but just seemed to run out a little bit of time. And at the end, nobody, not even Ryan Blaney, who had also a fast car, had anything for Tyler Reddick, 2311, who won. And he had to overcome some big issues. The first issue, a slow pit stop. That put him behind. He came back. Then they had to replace the battery, how they found that issue during lap 1. Put in a bigger battery, lost more positions. Then one of the more bizarre incidents to occur during green flag pit stops, Chris Buescher was making a move to the inside, but didn't appear to wave. Nobody appeared to do anything, trying to keep the strategy secret because we knew Tyler was going to be a big part of the strategy. He goes down, so does Tyler. They make contact, spins him. Tyler Reddick, no apparent damage to the car. He was still strong. And when you look at what he's done this year, some crazy stats. Only 1 race finish outside the top 10. He has won 4 of the first 6 races, and Toyota has won 5 out of the first 6 races. For Denny Hamlin, co-owner, he has been to victory lane 5 times in some sort of capacity as an owner or a driver through the first 6 races. Is this a statement win that for the championship, you got to go through Tyler Reddick and 2311?
I think the entire season so far, even if you go back to just Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta, I feel like the entire season's been a statement from that organization. They took off from the 500 and they have not let their foot off the gas, literally. So yeah, I think absolutely it's Toyota 5 out of 6. I think they said something along the lines in the media center. Make sure to note that they are the first team to do this since 2007 with Chevrolet, which I believe was that Toyota's first full year in Cup, or was that the year after? Either or, around the same time when they started, so pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Reddick, issues, whether it's that whole 2311 team seemed to have something going on, but it did not stop at least one of their cars, which was Tyler Reddick, from getting the job done. I was listening in on the NASCAR app to their radio, and immediately, like you said, Joe, on lap 1, it was always like, oh, we got an issue with the voltage. And I was listening, whether it was 12.4 up to almost 13. I don't know what the heck any of it meant, but it seemed to not be as big of an issue because it didn't stop him in the middle of the track. So they were able to change it after they said something was wrong with the alternator. And now Tyler Reddick has done something we haven't seen. I think we have only seen it twice in NASCAR history, believe it was Bill Elliott in 92 and then Dale Earnhardt in 87. The only guys who ever win for the first 6 races to start a season. So pretty elite company with Awesome Bill and the Intimidator with Tyler Reddick. He really doesn't have a nickname, but I mean, he's just an incredible talent. I think a lot of people are failing to realize how talented Tyler Reddick was just because he had a down year. This is now his, second or third or maybe even 4th year with 3 wins in a season. So it's like Tyler Reddick and 2024 regular season champion Tyler Reddick. So he's no fraud when it comes to getting the job done. And now he's ahead by, in the standings, I was looking like 100 and something points. So yeah, belt to butt. That's what this whole organization is doing. Even Bubba Wallace is still 3rd in points. Riley Herbst is doing pretty well. He's in the mid-20s in points. So for that team, pretty damn good start to the year, Joe. And I think without a doubt, even with Toyota in general, I think the championship runs through that manufacturer. But their luck, something's probably going to go wrong down the line. But for Tyler Reddick to maintain this huge lead right now, I think it says a lot. And I think a lot of the people that wanted to bring back the full season standings are all like, wait a second, maybe it's good that we have the chase, because Tyler Reddick seems like he's going to lead for a very long time. But Ryan Blaney is also catching fire like Ryan Blaney always does. So, yeah, statement win for 23XI, statement win for Tyler Reddick. Yet again, Michael Jordan, cool to see him in attendance again. Yeah, a lot of conspiracy theory people out there, which is very, very interesting to see. But I feel like they wouldn't be saying this. They weren't saying it in 2021 when Hendrick Motorsports won 17 races. They were quiet then. So I think it's more of a specific bias towards Toyota and probably the 23XI Racing organization, especially after the lawsuit. But I'm interested if anyone's in the chat room, comment your thoughts on how you're feeling about 23XI winning, 4 out of the first 6, and if you count Denny Hamlin, 5 out of 6. But yeah, so, and the Chevrolet, I know we'll touch on that. Where have they been? But yeah, I'm interested more to hear your thoughts, Joe, on, do you think the championship also runs through Tyler Reddick in 23XI?
Right now, the way it's looking, that answer is yes. They are not showing much of a weakness so far this season. I mean, from the drafting tracks of Daytona, Atlanta, the road course where he got the pole, got the win. We come over here, another pole, another win at Darlington, the track too tough to tame. And last week we talked about how this could be the test, because Darlington is that tough of a track where a lot of things can happen. We did see a lot of action on the track. We saw bad luck for Bubba Wallace, make him no longer the contender for the win. But at the end of the day, they came out strong, just doing their own thing. So I just feel this is just one of those teams. Right now, they're firing on all cylinders. Everything is working out great. They are just looking unbeatable. Can that keep up throughout the entire season? Yes, we've seen some drivers just be unbeatable all year long. The NASCAR Cup Series, one of the hardest series to do that, though. You got 36 races. You got, of course, the summer swing, which it seems that where some teams really start to come on strong. Can somebody catch up? One of the big things I will always remember, 2002 season. Granted, this was the Winston Cup era, so you didn't have a chase. But we all saw how Sterling Marlin started that season really strong with Chip Ganassi racing that number 40 Dodge. Looked unbeatable for the first few races, a win in Las Vegas, a win at Darlington. But then it just seems once the summer hit, they started missing races without top 10 finishes. Some races not leading the lap where you needed those points from leading lap. But of course, the injury ended his season, but it was at the point where it felt like that team had lost all this momentum. Now you got a chase aspect, where with the chase, the reset, that could be a great opportunity. Could we see another Tony Stewart just come alive in that chase and bring the fight to Tyler Reddick? There's so many unknown factors. So while some people are talking about, oh, Tyler Reddick has a big lead. Okay, so he's not going to lose the lead anytime soon, but it's very early on the season. There's still a lot of movement in the championship standings. I think it's far from over, but the way it's looking right now with Tyler Reddick, I think it's going to be one of those seasons where if we see a drop, it has to probably be in the summertime. I don't think it's going to come anytime within the next 2 or 3 weeks. But we know NASCAR competition, one of the hardest in the world. So many races, so many competitors on track, and a different dynamic of tracks, road courses, drafting tracks, intermediates, short tracks. Our next one, anything can happen. In the chat room, it should have been RFK Racing's car. Everything was going great until Tyler Reddick, aka Jackson Storm, shows up, puts Chris Buescher in the wall, and goes to win the race. Nobody's stopping him. Truly, nobody's stopping him. And I got to ask you that, Matt. I think it's easy to say if Tyler Reddick was not in the field, Brad Keselowski will be the winning car. But Chris Buescher, they were talking about how they didn't wave, they didn't want to show their strategy. Do you think that was a mistake, considering they were still in contention to win? They should have just made it clear, like, hey, we're pitting, don't hit us?
That's 100% Chris Buescher's fault and RFK's fault. I know Reddick did hit him, and he did make contact with Brad Keselowski, but that was because Keselowski was going high when Reddick was going low. I think it's a very fair comment, though. RFK Racing put on an absolute clinic, and they absolutely deserved at least a second-place finish, and I think Buescher was 9th. Buescher got a much and well-earned 42 points, I believe it was today, too, with his 9th-place finish. And it was just really cool to see them run the Biffle throwbacks, too. But, yeah, I like the nickname for Jackson Storm's kind of funny. I mean, the kid, Tyler Reddick, is an incredible talent, just like Jackson Storm was at the start of his Piston Cup career. But I don't really know if I would put the fault on Reddick in that situation. I think it was just miscommunication where they didn't want to show their strategy. However, if you go back to Darlington a few races ago, that was 100% on Reddick, what he did to Buescher. But even Chris Buescher said in his post-race interview that it was just a racing deal. So I take Chris's word for it, because Chris does not really have a fun relationship with Tyler Reddick, it seems like, especially after that, because I don't think Buescher's won since even before that. So Chris Buescher, who is an incredible talent, or maybe he has, I don't know, we'd have to look that up. But Chris Buescher, I think, is very underrated talent, one of the best in the sport, can really race anywhere, and he's just been on a bad luck stretch, but he is up to, I think he's top 10 in points still, so he's continuing to move up the ladder. He is one of the best overall drivers, like I said. But so, then again, I think so is Tyler Reddick. And then Brad Keselowski's still got a dog left in him. Yeah, Chris Buescher 7th. Thank you for pulling that up. I apologize. I did say Ryan Blaney was over 100 points back. He's only 95. So maybe if Reddick has some misfortune coming up, I think Reddick's one of his worst tracks, I think, is Martinsville, though. So maybe this is where it starts. But you never know. He wasn't great at Phoenix either, and he won. So, yeah, that's what I got for that. I think it's a very fair comment, though. Everything was going the way for RFK. I think they led over 200 laps combined, if I'm not mistaken. Buescher led a lot more than I thought. I think I can pull it up here, Joe. 41 laps for Chris Buescher led, and then obviously Keselowski was 142. That's so almost 200 laps led, but still, that's an impressive day for that organization. The Ryan Preece, 13th place. So another week where all three cars were inside, I believe, the top 15. So that organization's on the up. So shout out to RFK.
Yeah, I mean, granted, they always seem to be really good at Darlington. I mean, a couple of years ago, Keselowski got that win, and Buescher missed out because of their contact with Reddick. You look at what they're doing now. I mean, Chris Buescher up to 7th in the points. Brad Keselowski 9th in the points. Very impressive, considering he's doing this with a broken leg.
Yeah.
And you look at Ryan Preece, 12th in the points. At one point, I believe it was in the top 10, having all three cars in the top 10. So RFK, I agree with Kid Laughlin. This could have been their day. This probably should have been this day. It's just Tyler Reddick was just so unstoppable. At the end of the day, we're not winning, you're in anymore. So we don't have Keselowski locking himself in. But the way they're running, if they keep this up, they could consistently be a week in, week out contender. And I see nothing but potential from RFK. And we encourage everyone to share your comments, opinions with us on the air. Again, thank you, Kid Latin, for that. That crash with Buescher, it did not bring out a caution, surprisingly. And the race officiating, we only had 4 cautions, but we still saw plenty of trouble all around. I mean, on the track, we saw where you had the incident with Eric Jones, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, And the reason why both was that far behind after starting second, slow pit stop. Now, Jones did recover to finish 10th place. Good effort by him. One spot ahead of Hamlin 11th. But whilst 34th in the points, that's how he lost second place to Ryan Blaney as those two swap positions. Buescher, that spin, no caution, but recovered to finish 9th. RFK, Keselowski, 2nd, Priest, 13th, as we mentioned. All sporting those tributes to Greg Biffle. Really was hoping to see them get a win. And then Kyle Larson. Granted that he led some laps. He wasn't exactly the strongest car. Fell to 34th. Tough break. 32nd. Tough break for him. And 33rd for Joey Logano. Terrible car. Just no handling. The other caution that came out when Riley Herbst, who was also having a good run too, got spun. Still plenty of side-by-side racing all across. Tire management was a big thing. Seeing the cars. One point, that 3-wide move with Carson Hocevar, Buescher, and Ty Gibbs. That is some great racing, and we saw a packed, sold out Darlington. Stands were full. How much did this race improve with the new 750 horsepower package and less downforce?
I think a lot, especially when you consider the last two events here where we've had drivers, which was, I believe, Chase Briscoe when he led like 309 laps last time out. And then I think the race before that, Briscoe actually won. But the one that William Byron led like 240 laps, I think that's the one that Denny Hamlin came home in victory lane. I think that was a Carl Edwards throwback race where he won in that. But yeah, so we didn't see somebody, I mean, you could argue Brad Keselowski leading over 140 laps was kind of like that, but it wasn't the same as leading 240 or 309 laps that we saw. So I think it allowed for more racing. And also, I know the less downforce, a lot more loosey-goosey cars out there, but I think the horsepower helped out with, like you said, Joe, a lot of the passing that we saw. And we saw some pretty great racing there, and it sucks that a lot of guys who are running really well for themselves, guys like Bubba Wallace, guys like Riley Herbst even was running inside the top 15 most of the race and then gets spun, and then at the end Briscoe walled him pretty good, and then they were like, just come down pit road, you're already 4 laps down, you got a lot of damage, just don't bring out a caution for Tyler Reddick. But yeah, you mentioned that officiating thing. I thought they were pretty they've been consistent, so I want to clap for NASCAR officiating 6 weeks in a row where it was not something like, oh, why are they throwing the caution now? Every time they needed to, they threw it. And that's even when Kyle Larson had his toe link issue, like you mentioned, they didn't throw a caution for that. Multiple guys on the wall in the last 4 laps. They did not want an overtime finish. And I think unless you're an anti-2311 Tyler Reddick driver, I think everyone was okay with not having an overtime either, because just based on a lot of people hate it is what I was getting at, Joe, is a lot of people don't like NASCAR overtime. And I think with such a long green flag run to the end of the race, for it to just a caution to come out with 2 or 3 to go. We saw it, I think, was it last year with Briscoe or the year before? I think it was last year when Reddick was leading, the caution came out and Briscoe ended up getting back in front of him and winning it. Like, it changes races a lot of the time. So I think for a guy like Reddick, who was really up front all day, someone like Brad Keselowski up front all day, I think it was good for them to finish first and second. But yeah, I think with the 750 horsepower, that's one way I think they've tried to improve the racing. I feel like if they gradually add more to that, I think the drivers will like it. I think the product has been pretty decent so far this year. I'd argue Vegas was very boring. And I don't know if Phoenix, I can't remember off the top of my head if it was as boring, but I remember us just talking in our Slack chat like, oh, this is not really the best for a car that's great with the intermediates. It really just was not a lot of action happened. And sometimes you have those. I mean, if you grew up as a NASCAR fan prior to 1998, I feel like a lot of the races ended up like that. I was not born yet, so that's why I say don't take my word for it because I wasn't there. But yeah, that's all I got for that one.
Overall, I felt it was an improvement from years past. Darlington is one of those tracks where it seems that you could have a race where tire management is always the big key. I mean, when we saw the stage break end, then we came back. Riley Herbst had his crash. We had a caution shortly afterwards. And then it became, okay, we're coming in doing pit stops again. If you have the tires, you're going to get them. That is always the consistent. What's a bit inconsistent is you might have races where they're just caution after caution, crash after crash. It seems like everyone does not have a handle. I was really surprised. They said this was the hottest day of the weekend, but everyone raced really well. We didn't see a whole lot of chaos on the track. We know drivers were trying to feather the throttle, which is making it work. I mean, a couple times 3 wide. And overall, the NASCAR officiating, I have to say, I agree with you. I think they did a good job. Like, as folks are probably seeing online, the online footage of when Kyle Larson hit the wall, broke the toe link, started going slow to the point where he was below the minimum pace. I think a lot of people, Joe, are thinking they don't want to see a caution unless you really are against Tyler Reddick. They were just hoping, let's just get a good, clean race in, because overall, I thought the racing action was really good. I mean, from the tire strategy, you saw a driver who was just unstoppable, and Tyler Reddick go from the back towards the front. Blaney come towards the front. Hocevar, he was fast towards the end. Granted, he had the newest set of tires, but only by a lap over Reddick. I know he wished it was a caution to just see what he could have done, but that would have been overtime, and that could have just bring a whole lot of changes and chaos. So I think a lot of folks just appreciated that we had a pretty solid race with this car. One team that I feel like they're probably not exactly thrilled, but overall had somewhat of a solid day, has to be Hendrick Motorsports. Chevrolet, they're probably just more frustrated. There are now 6 races without a win. And when you look at Hendrick, first time Hendrick and Chevrolet together, 6 races into the season without a win. Longest for both organizations. The strongest Chevrolet team, I have to say, was Spire Motorsports. Dan Suarez, Carson Hocevar, they were running up towards the front. Both of them, good, solid days. When you look at what happened with Byron, top 10, Kyle Larson was there, but then just started fading. And then, of course, the wall contact. Chase Elliott, not a whole lot going on. And that Ally 48 team, just not up to pace with them. Trackhouse Racing, bit further behind as well, too. One of the interesting things, Matt, I was just very curious, was when in our message group chat, Jonathan Fields from the Racing Expert, he was saying how this could potentially be part with the new body, and it appears, in his opinion, that the balance between the aero grip, so the grip made by the downforce, and the balance with that and the mechanical grip, whatever the cars are doing, that might be Hendrick Motorsports' weak spot, and it seems that Spire has just found that perfectly. Are you surprised by how Hendrick seems to be behind the Spire Motorsports?
Well, yeah, it does surprise me, but at the same time, you got to realize that Hendrick still has 3 cars ahead of Spire in the standings. And I think that's just a product of when you have Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and William Byron in your organization, you're going to be up front all the time. And I think it is a great point by Jonathan. You shout out to racingexperts.com. He's been putting out great questions we've seen on social media from Jonathan that have gone viral from other accounts reposting them, as well as his own account. So really happy for Jonathan getting back into the coverage, being live at the track. And we were able to do that at Grid Network too. Thank you to all the investors too, obviously. But yeah, for Hendrick, William Byron, is weird when he finished 8th, which is kind of crazy because he was up front, and then he, like you said, Joe, just wasn't, nobody was there. No Chevrolet drivers were there. And then Daniel Suarez was up towards the front, and then Carson Hocevar went from starting like 36 because of unapproved adjustments because he hit the wall so many dang times during practice and qualifying, but made his way up to 4th. His best career finish at Darlington, only his 5th career top 5 in that young career, so he's got a long way to go. The reason why I know that is because I looked it up writing my story for gridnetworktv.com, which you guys will see very soon. But for that, Hendrick, I think it's, I hate to say it, but I think it's awesome that this year we've seen 2 of the 3 top dogs in the manufacturers, as in Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports, kind of be behind a little bit in terms of like partnership teams like Spire and 2311 seem to be doing significantly better than them. And I know Denny Hamlin's got a win. I know Christopher Bell's up there in points looking. Yeah, so both of them, even Ty Gibbs is on a huge run of multiple top 10s in a row. But for them, it's cool to see not the number one priority is what I'm getting at, to be the top team in terms of what we've seen out of their cars. So for Spire, Daniel Suarez has found something that I think finally an organization, it took, well, how long's he been in Cup? Gosh, 2017, 2018. So he's been in Cup for a near decade now. And I think he's finally getting the respect he deserves in terms of feedback. I know he had it for 1 year at Trackhouse, but then as soon as Ross came in, that was it. Ross became the number one driver instantly over there. So for Daniel, to him to be in a chase spot right now, I think so, right? Yeah, 14th, and then Hocevar being 13th. Even McDowell was there in 17th in the standings. Thank you for pulling that up. I was looking down at my phone. That's why I'm at the standings. But yeah, pretty good for Spire Motorsports. I know they have a lot of money with TWG Motorsport, or Global, not Motorsport, but yeah, it's very weird, though, to see Hendrick Motorsports seem to be behind the 8-ball, and even them being behind the 8-ball, they still have Chase Elliott in 5th, William Byron in 6th, Kyle Larson in 10th. Still wishing a speedy recovery to Alex Bowman, but I think we've seen from Justin Allgaier's performances that 48 car, regardless who is in it, is just nowhere near the other three. And I think I've been preaching it. I know a couple of us here at Grid Network have been preaching that for the last couple seasons, that Alex Bowman is just not getting the same. He's like the trial 4th car at that organization. And I think, unfortunately, even if he does get healthy, it's pushing him out of that car. I don't know who will be in it, but it's probably not going to be him. And that sucks. But yeah, I answered the question, and then I went on my own little circular tangent there. So I apologize for that. But yeah, how about you, Joe? I know you're the one who honestly brought up, too, with Hendrick being behind the 8-ball when it came to Spire Motorsports today. So what do you feel about that?
I feel you brought up a good point. The Hendrick Motorsport drivers are ahead in the points. Overall, I feel Hendrick, the consistency, that's something they always have. And I think that is something that has helped them out a ton. If Carson Hocevar finds that consistency, he is going to be up there in the points. If Daniel Suarez was 7th in the points. We know Phoenix didn't go good, lost a lot of ground. Then you had the last race weekend where Vegas looked promising, slid towards the end. If they have the consistency there, they're going to get stuff done. I know Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, those three are always going to be good. If I had to say when it comes to consistency, I would almost say Kyle Larson sometimes I feel is the weakest link when it comes to the consistency, because he seems to either win, be in the top 5, or bad luck crashes, something occurs, and it's not up there. And he can't afford doing that anymore with this format where you need those points. So overall, Hendrick Motorsports, they seem to have something going where they'll be up there towards the front. It just seems some runs they're really looking good, working their way towards the front, staying up there. Then some runs they slide to the back. Today was it was a solid day, but for Hendrick Motorsports caliber, I mean, this is a team that has so many wins. They should always be championship contenders. It will be championship contenders. I think the consistency is going to be there, but Aspire could find that consistency, especially Suarez and Hocevar. They're going to be tough to beat. One of the things, too, Michael McDowell, I think he needs to step up his consistency just because he just slid out of the top 16 in points. But you look at this race. For caution, 16 lead changes. The points are still, we're seeing a lot of movement across the board. I mentioned Blaney and Wallace. Of course, that's the only change in the top 5. Bell, he lost 2 spots. William Byron, Chris Buescher, again, the consistency. Bell did not have that great of a day. Brad Keselowski, 12th to 9th in the points. What a move by him, while Kyle Larson dropped from 7th to 10th. Ty Gibbs, despite a top 10 finish, 11th, dropping one position. Dan Suarez up 3 spots to 14th with his teammate in 13th. Priest, SVG, both gained the ground. Of course, SVG coming off a horrible race weekend in Las Vegas where he lost a ton of ground, but now has positioned himself up there. The biggest loser of the race weekend, though, Joey Logano, losing 5 positions, finishing 16th, and is now on the bubble, while Michael McDowell, he is right there in 17th. Pretty much they're leveled on points. McDowell, he's pretty good at the road courses, but we know Logano's good at Martinsville, which is next race weekend. 20 races remain. So we still have plenty of time, but just looking at the points picture, what are the biggest surprises for you in the standings?
That's a good question. I think after last year with RFK not getting any victories, I think them having multiple cars inside the top 12 is quite impressive. I think, with all due respect to Suarez and SVG, I think them being 14th and 15th is definitely a shocking thing. I think Shane is figuring out ovals, and that is quite a scary sight for the rest of NASCAR. And then Suarez finally, like I said, getting the respect he deserves. I think it's awesome that he's up there in 14th. Other than that, Logano just was the most non-existent Joey Logano I think we've ever seen in terms of a Logano that completes 98% of the laps in an event. Like, he was just nowhere to be found. McDowell doesn't shock me. I have a feeling, though, if he doesn't pick it up, which he's doing pretty well. I had a great race at COTA, but I think if he doesn't do well, I think Kyle Busch is going to be in that 71 car, it seems like, that come next year, or he'd probably give him some other number. But, yeah, and then Zane Smith, too. Trackhouse has been abysmal, but they had 14th, 16th, and 18th today. So round of applause. Connor Zilic finally being able to finish a race inside the top 20. He probably had one earlier in the year. I think he did. But in terms of just the way that kid's luck has been, it seems like if there was an incident on track, the 88 car was involved in it. But those are probably the biggest surprises and points. And then looking down on the standings too on my phone, Chase Briscoe still only being 22nd is very, 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 very shocking. I can't say very enough to determine or to pretty much distinguish how shocking Chase Briscoe being 22nd is. And then, Riley Herbst is now down to 27th. That's still pretty good for him, especially the way the year's gone. Josh Berry's been abysmal. We don't talk about him, but he's 32nd. Just no luck for that organization running. I know it's a Wood Brothers car, but technically a fourth Penske car if you want to be technical with the technical alliances. So those are surprises to me. I thought Berry would be better. Kyle Busch being 23rd. I know we haven't talked about him. RCR has been horrific. I think there's some statistic like this is the longest start to a season they've ever had in their history that they didn't get a top 10 yet. And when you have one of the greatest, if not the greatest drivers of all time in your organization, that says a lot. So I feel horrible for RCR when it comes to having the talent in Kyle Busch. I know he's a little older now, but he's probably going to get the hell out of there if they don't figure it out. And I know that's the silly season rumor every single year, but yeah, that's just one of those things. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Also, Ty Gibbs too. Touch on him. He was pretty bad last year for a kid with all that talent, and he's up to 11th this year. So, yeah, that's pretty good in my eyes. But then, yeah, no other shocking things on my end. I think the top 5, top 6 make a lot of sense with everyone in there. But curious to hear your thoughts, Joe.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Josh Berry, 32nd in the points. You look at the drivers behind him in the stands. Connor Zilic finally got a top 20 finish. Cole Custer, Cody Ware, Alex Bowman. The rest are not full-time drivers. That team from a year ago when they got the win at Vegas, I just thought they find the consistency, not great finish or crash, they will get great results. But that is not working out. They are getting nothing. I'm just curious what's going on with that team. I have to say, 24th, 25th in points, Eric Jones, John Hunter Nemechek. I was anticipating this could be a better start to the season. They were looking pretty good, like they were making progress at the end of last year. Eric Jones, finally a good solid run today. But John Hunter Nemechek, I'm starting to think he's going to be on the hot seat if we're not seeing an improvement. He's been there long enough. There was talk in the beginning of the season that, okay, he's really changed a lot since the end of last season. But he's just not living up to the expectations, in my opinion. You hit on Briscoe, Kyle Busch, totally very much agree with. Austin Cindric moving up to 21st. He gained quite a bit of positions, and after the start he had, good to see him get a top up run in Darlington. I know some people have even said it seems like him and Logano swapped cars or something. But then Trackhouse, Chastain 20th, Shane Van Gisbergen 15th. That's the big surprise for me. And we know, yes, the road course helped Shane Van Gisbergen out. But Shane Van Gisbergen is getting much better on the ovals, and it just appears Trackhouse, for a while, they were not looking that great. I mean, for a while, I believe Shane Van Gisbergen was close to being a lap down, but they were managed to have a top 20 finish for all three cars. It seems like maybe they're getting a little bit of a slow start. And one driver been very much quiet. We haven't talked about, but I feel like considering the circumstances, AJ Allmendinger, 18th in the points, striking distance of the top 16. That team's not getting support because of the mess with Colleague, Chevrolet, and Dodge over in the Craftsman Truck Series. He's not looking too bad. I mean, putting himself up there, I thought he would have been further back, but considering he's ahead of drivers like Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who has a win, Josh Berry, gotta give it to him. So let's see how that all plays out for everybody as the season continues on. Go into the comments where we see a comment from Isaiah saying, screw Kyle, I assume that's Kyle Busch. He gets better in time, and one of the things he did agree with one of our points, I'm not exactly sure which one, but Kyle Busch, yeah, I mean, 23rd in points, not looking like RCR is making the right progress. I have to ask you this, going a bit off script. You mentioned about him maybe jumping into the 71. If things are just so bad that, okay, Kyle is RCR just getting no progress made, could we maybe see a mid-season switch with Kyle Busch, the 71, if we see Michael McDowell's not living up? Or, and this is very speculative, maybe in the 48 team, if we find out it might be a while before Bowman returns.
Yeah, that's a very interesting off the dome type of question. Also, shout out Isaiah's first time in the stream too, so thank you for tuning in. But yeah, that's interesting. I think Kyle Busch prays every single day that one of those situations happen. I don't think either of them will, but if he's lucky that a seat opens up at Spire, I think the way silly season is about to work, these are obviously predictions and we don't know anything. I truly think Kyle will go from RCR to, it would be Spire. I think that Mr. Jesse Love gets a Legacy Motor Club seat, and I think if John Hunter Nemechek gets demoted to O'Reilly or goes somewhere else, I think Riley Herbst moves over to Legacy, and then I think Corey Heim will move up to Cup for 2311. All that's speculative, but those guys are all in contention, and that sucks. The reason why I bring that up for RCR, because if you lose Kyle Busch, who the heck are you going to put in the 8 car if Jesse Love ends up going to race for former current and also another West Coast driver in Jimmy Johnson and Legacy with Toyota? I guess you can put, we're joking in the chat behind, you could put Austin Hill in the car. I don't know if Austin Hill wants to be, I think he would rather win 3 races a year in O'Reilly than be in an RCR tractor at the Cup level. But you could also, if you want to put Michael McDowell in there, I don't know. I think someone like Noah Gragson fits RCR's, I guess, style more. But then again, he's been not great this year. I think front row is really missing on every cylinder except Zane Smith. So shout out Zane Smith. I think he deserves the best. But yeah, to answer your question, Joe, I think if we were to see a number 48 swap, which I hope we don't, just because I wish Alex Bowman the absolute best in his recovery, I am interested to see if Allgaier is going to keep running that, or if they are going to give, if this does continue on, if they're going to give guys like Raja Kruth a shot, guys like Carson Kvapil a shot. Carson Kvapil was rumored to be leaving that organization for a different manufacturer, but I know that hasn't happened, or we don't know if it will happen. But just give Sammy Smith, another guy, just give somebody a shot from the Chevrolet camp in the 48. Unless they throw hundreds of millions of dollars at Justin Marks and say, we want Connor Zilic, in exchange you can have someone else. We joked in the chat being Corey Day, but obviously we do not need to see Corey Day in a cup car in the next couple of years. But he has, we'll talk about it on Grid Rising on Monday nights. Corey Day has shut myself and Tanner up these last couple of weeks, so I love to see that. But yeah, I think Kyle Busch, to answer your question with the long point again, Joe, I think Kyle Busch would love to be in the 48 or the 71 or any car that is not the number 8 at this point, or the 3. But unfortunately, that's not the way it works unless we see some sort of trade like we did with Justin Haley and Corey LaJoie. Talk about a lose-lose for both organizations now that neither of them are racing full-time in Cup. And they've both kind of been racing in the Colleague Ram program, it seems like. So shout out to Justin Haley and Corey LaJoie. But yeah, curious for you, Joe, before we touch on the next question, what else do you think could possibly happen for even the 48? And then even if like Kyle Busch continues to just be very angry at, which he's not vocal about it, but this things he said about when Garrett Mitchell, aka Cletus McFarlane, was like, even Brexton has more rides than him. So I feel like he doesn't like what RCR has been doing these last couple seasons for him on a career-long winless streak too. So just curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I see Kyle Busch. He may get to the point where, you know what, I'm fed up, I'm done. But I don't see him doing what Kurt Busch had done. Kurt Busch was willing to go to Phoenix, James Finch Motorsport team, the 51, race there, just try to see if he can make it better. Then, of course, Kurt Busch went to Furniture Road, the 78. I don't see Kyle Busch being that kind of driver. I see him being, I want to go with a team that can put me to position to win. If we see Kyle Busch make a midseason swap change, I think it's going to be, my opinion, if the news is, hey, the vertigo is not clearing up in a fast pace, and if Kyle Busch, we're at a point in the season, it's like, look, things are going rough. We've gone through Talladega, and I'm still winless, and I'm not making progress. I just want to get out, try to salvage what I can for the regular season. If for some reason we see Spire really contend, get better and better, and for some reason Michael McDowell is just struggling. Michael McDowell's 41, but I think he has to be really struggling before McDowell and Spire says, hey, we're going to make a change. I think they'll be committed to finish out the season with McDowell, especially if they have the other team still running good and he could still get the job done on the road courses. That's his big strength. So overall, for Kyle Busch, it's very limited. I mean, I do not see him going anywhere else unless there's some unexpected change. I don't see him going to a single car effort team like the 47 that Stenhouse currently owns. The 41, Cole Custer, that team is struggling, but I do not see Kyle Busch saying, I want to go there anytime soon. This is just something I think Kyle Busch is just going to have to finish out the season with and hope to get a deal in the 71 car with Spire Motorsports. But we'll see what happens at the end of the day. I just feel Kyle Busch is very short on options. Looking into next week, the Cookout 400 at Martinsville Speedway, the shortest track on the schedule for the NASCAR Cup Series. The last 10 races, Blaney has the best average finish ahead of Denny Hamlin. Logano, Chase Elliott, and William Byron are your top 5 finishers when it comes to average finishes in Martinsville. But then you look at Tyler Reddick, 18th in average finish of 17.5 in 12 races there. He has a 95-point lead over second place Ryan Blaney. So he will leave Martinsville with the points no matter what happens. The big thing for everyone else is this the opportunity for the other drivers to win, knowing that this could be the opportunity, and which driver needs to win the most?
I think there's a lot of guys that need to win the most. It's going to sound really peculiar, and I really never thought I would say it, but I think Kyle Larson needs a win more than anyone. And the reason why I say that is because he is the best at Martinsville in recent races. There's no doubt about it. 5 top 5, 6 top 10s in 6 races. But he has not won in almost 11 months. This is the 2025 champion. Kyle Larson has not won a race since May of 2025. So for him being 10th in points this early into the season, I should say this far into it, because he's usually first, second, or third at this point, even though Atlanta and Daytona, which Echo Park Speedway, are not his strongest tracks, or 2 of his weaker tracks. So for him to be usually still up front says a lot about his talent. But yeah, this year he just hasn't had any luck. So I think he's a big one. Ross Chastain is another one I would argue that really needs a win, because he was a guy who I think I picked as a champion favorite in like 2023 and 2024, and he has fallen off a cliff since then, and now he is 20th in the standings. And so Trackhouse just needs to find speed. I think they could find it there with Ross Chastain. Even Shane Van Gisbergen, I don't think does terrible there. Other guys too. Just looking at averages of finishes too. Chris Buescher could use one. He's been not really great there. But even in the standings, you need some great performances out of guys towards the back who don't really do well there lately. Kyle Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a guy like Michael McDowell should be able to pick it up. But again, these are guys with 20th or worse average finishes at this track. Daniel Suarez, if he wants to keep it up, he's only got 1 finish inside the top 20 here in the last 6 races, and it was 17th. So for him, if he wants to stay up where he is in the standings, he's got to figure that out. And then there's so many other guys that maybe won't contend for a win, Joe, but I think they will be able to at least contend to finish in the top 10, top 15. The other guys, I mean, William Byron's still high on the standing, so I wouldn't worry too much about him. But another guy, Ryan Preece, does pretty decent here for a guy who hasn't won yet in his career, who is up there in the standings to keep that up. I think it's all about building that confidence, and just continuing on. But you said, like you mentioned, Ryan Blaney, one of the best here. Kyle Larson, one of the best here too. Blaney has nothing to worry about. I'm sure he will be fine. Actually, he does have something to worry about, Joe. That damn pit crew. I don't know what they are doing. 33rd, I think, out of 36 ranking. They screwed him, for a lack of a better term, again today. I don't know if he would have won, but he probably would have finished probably in 3rd again. But at least he would have had a more fair shot. He was like, 5 to 10 seconds back at the end of the race, because that's what happens. Pit crews crap. Bubba Wallace, too, loose wheel, or felt like a loose wheel, gets put back, averaging a 2nd or 3rd running place in the race, ends up having to go back to near 20th, getting back through, then involved in the wreck, ruining his day. Pit crews are very important, is what I'm getting at. So even at Martinsville, it's even more important, I would argue, because you have a bad pit stop on a green flag stop, you go 2 laps down as opposed to 1, or maybe even 3 as opposed to 2, and it can really just mess your entire race up. And then if there's no cautions, Martinsville, in a nice way, has been boring, in my opinion. And I think a lot of it, maybe the horsepower, if they have an update for that this week, I think that might change. But other than that, it seems like whoever gets out front just leads a lot, and you have to literally ram them out of the way. But that's just short track racing for you. In the next gen era, I should say. That's definitely suffered tremendously. But another guy, too, just before I throw it back to you, I think Chase Briscoe, pretty decent at Martinsville. had a pretty great run back in the wall ride in 2022. If those of you don't remember, was up front on strategy and held his line pretty good until end up falling back because he needed the win to make the championship four, which he didn't. But yeah, that's all I got. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you about Kyle Larson. I mean, Kyle Larson this season, he has a consistency, but it's not the Kyle Larson we anticipate, not the Kyle Larson of 10 wins, being a weekly contender for the win. Part of it may be because of the Chevrolet bodies and just having that new package for the Chevrolets. But this will be a great opportunity for him to get the win because Hendrick Motorsports, Martinsville, they always seem to be strong in the spring race. William Byron, I think, will love to get a win just so that way he could say, hey, I'm starting to put things together for my championship drive, try to prove I could be up there with everyone. Because overall, he's been the most consistent driver. Chase Elliott will love to have it good, strong there. So I think the Hendrick Motorsport trio in general will love to get a win. Ryan Preece, that would be great if he gets a win, because if Ryan Preece gets a win this early in the season, granted, he won the Cookout Clash. I get it. It's not a points race. So when you look at career cup wins, it's still to 0. At a short track, his specialty, if he could get that, he could really prove that he is up to caliber with Chris Buescher, with Brad Keselowski, and that you should not be surprised if he's in the chase. If anything, he's finally showing that potential. Christopher Bell, considering how strong he started last season, how things just didn't exactly work out for him in the playoffs last year. This year, I thought he would be strong. I feel like he's been average, not exactly Christopher Bell-like. I mean, he's down 8th in the points. I feel overall he could be a much better spot. I would like to see him go out there, be a winning contender, and I think he would really benefit from just having a win at Martinsville. He knows how to win at Martinsville before he done it during the wall ride race. Everyone forgot about that, but he won that race, and he was in a must-win situation. I feel that must-win situation Christopher Bell type person is missing this year. So we'll see what Christopher Bell could do, but those are some of the drivers I feel could really benefit from a win at Martinsville next weekend. In the chat room, Isaiah, give me Reddick, the Rocket.
I like that. I know Ryan Newman had it, but so Denny Hamlin also had the Hurricane way back when, and now that's Hocevar's. So maybe Reddick could be the new Rocket. Sorry to interrupt you, but that was good thought.
Yeah, and then I was going to say him or BK Brad Keselowski, and I think if I'm blaming, I'm finding them all. I'm wondering if that's the pit crew, because he had a chance, and he had that opportunity, but yeah, the pit crew, my goodness, they're just a lot of issues, a lot of pit crew issues today, very concerning. And I think it really just shows the importance of what happened with Bubba Wallace. They were able to recognize that lug nut was loose, so that he didn't even have to leave pit road. They just stopped him, tightened up, still lost just enough positions, put him behind Jones, Hamlin. The incident occurs. Car was just not the same afterwards. Wallace could be a driver that could really benefit from a win. Seeing his teammate get all these wins and him not getting a win, still very strong in the points, 3rd, so I don't think he needs to win, but it'll be a good confidence boost that I am up there with my teammate. So we'll be following to see everything that happens in Martinsville next race weekend. Of course, subscribe to us right here on YouTube so you don't miss any of our coverage. Matthew, before we let you go and we switch over to IMSA competition, we'll give you your time for your shiny moment.
Gosh, another great weekend, Joe, of motorsports. You guys have so much to talk about. IMSA, MotoGP, Formula E. Fortunately, I took up a lot of time talking about NASCAR, so I apologize to you guys there. But I think for me, my one shiny moment from the upper level series of racing, I mean, it's hard to argue against Tyler Reddick being the guy, and then 2311 and Toyota having another great race. So they're probably my one major shining moment. I think Felipe Nasser is another one you guys will touch on. But even Eric Jones, I want to mention. Eric Jones is a driver I have a lot of confidence in. I think I have almost too much confidence in Eric Jones. I think he deserves more than he gets, especially since 2020 when Christopher Bell came over and took over the Gibbs car. I just feel like Eric Jones hasn't been in race-winning equipment, even though he has won since then. And for him, this is his second straight top 10 at Darlington. It goes back to 2017 to 2020 when he went back to back to back to back to back to back in the top 10, racing for Furniture Row and Joe Gibbs Racing, all in the top 10. So for Eric Jones, that's a confidence booster for legacy, even though he got spun out because he checked up and Denny Hamlin just completely ran into him and then took out his own car and Bubba Wallace there. But yeah, so I would say with especially Tyler Reddick, could argue Felipe Nasser. There's more guys you're going to be touching on. There's more guys we'll be touching on in Grid Rising Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time with Tanner and I, episode 6. But yeah, just had to throw that little plug in there too. But I think our major one shining moment is Tyler Reddick, without a doubt, Joe. Just another weekend of just great racing. And I think great coverage too by you guys here and myself. I would say I can't really say you guys because I'm a part of it. But yeah, Grid Network. So just awesome. Glad to be a part of it and glad to be a part of these racing weekends. So much more to talk about, though. So thank you for my time and letting me chit-chat with you guys here. And yeah, Grid Rising and GridNetworkTV.com. That's where you will find me. If you don't want to hear my voice anymore, I suggest you don't go to either of those two. But you still should anyway. But that's all I got, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, for your time. And of course, we encourage everyone Grid Network TV, race recap by Matt, and then tomorrow, Grid Rising right here on YouTube. Let's now switch over to IMSA and the WeatherTech Endurance Championship. Yesterday's Mobil won 12 Hours of Sebring, the second race of the 2026 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season, saw the same manufacturer continue its dominant run. Porsche Penske Motorsports is still the lead team to beat in GTP, with the number 7 Porsche 963 of Felix Nasser, Julian Antlander, and Lauren Heinrich taking the overall win ahead of the number 6, giving Roger Penske a 1-2 finish at Sebring. Now the number 7 Porsche team has won the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring. So back-to-back for the second consecutive year, sweeping the 36 Hours of Florida. Despite other GTP manufacturers develop their prototypes and bringing updates during the offseason, Porsche still appears to be a step ahead of everyone, even with the balance of performance adjustment from IMSA. Kobe, after 2 races, does the Porsche Penske Motorsports team look unstoppable, and can the number 7 Porsche keep up this for the entire IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season?
Yeah, after the first 2 races for the second consecutive year, Porsche Penske Motorsport look like nobody can beat them. It's really crazy, Joe, because heading into this 2026 season, we've seen all of the updates the manufacturers have brought. I think just about every single manufacturer in the GTP class, including Porsche, brought updates to their car for this year. Because remember, the Rolex 24, JDC Miller Motorsports got permission from IMSA to use last year's configuration because unfortunately they weren't able to afford the parts for this year's car. But the 2026 Porsche looks just as strong as the one that they've been using during its GTP life cycle so far. And we talked about this, with Alex Palou in the IndyCar series. If you were a GTP manufacturer who got your butts kicked by Porsche Penske Motorsport last year, if you aim for the level that they were at last year, you're still gonna miss, because Porsche Penske Motorsport is going to continue to work hard and set that bar even higher than before. So if you thought the bar was high in 2025 and you're like, oh, we're going to try to get to that bar in next year, and now you've seen the bar is even higher, so you're going to miss if you're trying to eclipse Porsche Penske Motorsport from the 2025 season, because the 2026 season, after 2 races, they're just doing everything right. And and as they like to say, it's been a Penske perfect 36 Hours of Florida, going out there winning the Rolex 24, and then Sebring between the both of their cars led pretty much almost the entire race. And it would have been a shame, considering the fact that how dominant they were if they had lost that at the end. I know we'll talk a little bit more about the end in a couple of minutes or so. But it's just really crazy that, no matter what you do to Porsche, you can BOP them all you want. You can add weight to the cars. You can restrict the power to the engine, and they're still going to beat you, every single time. It certainly has to be frustrating for the other GTP manufacturers. But I'm sure later on in the season, we'll see some of the other manufacturers rack up wins, at some point, because it's only the second race of the season. Still have a long season to go in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And Joe, I'm glad you brought up that last part about the number 7 Porsche keeping this up for the entire season. And the thing that, Felipe Nasr and this number 17 want to do, they want to avoid what happened in 2025. Yeah, Porsche, it seemed like they had the best car all throughout last year, but it didn't last. So far, they've won the first 2 races, number 17. Last year, they actually went 3 for 3 at the start of the season. They won Daytona, Sebring, and the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. So we could see history repeat itself. See Felipe Nasr at number 17 win the first 3 races of the season. And guess what happened after that? They kind of completely fell off. They had a podium, after Long Beach at Laguna Seca. Just missed out on the podium in the streets of Detroit. And then after Detroit, it just, that number 17 just fell apart at the end of the year. They had they were doing so well in the championship and then completely blew it down the stretch. After the 4th place finish, in the early summer in Detroit, they did not finish. And so they had no finish better than 10th, in the GTP class for the remainder of the 2025 season. At Watkins Glen and Road America, they finished 11th. At Indianapolis, they got 12th. And Petit Le Mans, they finished 10th. So this team got off to a hot start last year, and then it completely fell apart. And I think the big test for them in 2026 is can they keep winning? And if they're not winning, are they going to have good punch days? Can they be consistent for the rest of the year? That's what I'm going to be looking forward to seeing from this number 17 throughout the rest of the season, Joe.
A lot of folks are going to be curious if that will happen again. Start off so strong and then just start falling off and then just being nowhere. It's going to be very interesting to follow the number 7 Porsche Penske team and what they could do this year. Now, while the Porsche Penske 1-2 finish looked good on paper, there was some drama between teammates on the way to getting both cars on the podium. So let's start off with that final stint. Felix Nasr was behind the wheel of the number 7, while Kevin Estre was behind the wheel of the number 6 Porsche. As the race was entering the final hour, Nasr was ordered to give the top spot to Estre, who was on fresher Michelin tires. The fresher tires, faster times. So Estre got ahead and believed he was good out front until Nasr made an unexpected move on his teammate to retake the lead. During the post-race press conference, Estre was very upset with Nasr and believed that team orders were not respected. According to Sports Cars 365, Estre said he was trying to be optimizing the strategy as best as he could by saving enough fuel for the end, and that Nasr pounced, got out front, and never looked back. Estre wasn't done there, because then he went on to social media after race, saying he wished the fight with Nasr was fair, but sadly there was no fight for the win, adding that he has respected team orders his whole career because that's how he's been educated, and accused Nasr of not having that education. Nasr responded after the race, saying there are different versions of what they were told to do. His version, Estre's version, and the team version. But he wanted to win the race. Does Estre have a point, Kobe, to be upset with Felipe Nasr?
Well, 2 things. I think yes, he has a right to be upset because he didn't win the race, and 2, no, I don't think he has a right to be upset with Felipe Nasr, because at the time, Estre was out front, and then obviously Nasr was second, and behind them, I believe it was the number 31 Action Express Racing, Wheeling Engineering Cadillac. I think Jack Aiken was behind the wheel at the time, and that Cadillac was, catching the Porsches. And at the time, Estre, he needed to get up down the road. I know he had the fresher Michelins, but I guess Felipe Nasr, felt the pressure from behind, so he felt like that he needed to do what he needed to do to, get down the road and escape that Cadillac. And I think that's what caught Estre off guard. He thought he was going to, hold the lead there. And then, Nasr was going to follow, and I guess be the wingman and play defense to hold off that Cadillac to get a 1-2 for Porsche. But, Felipe Nasr, he didn't sign on to, be a Porsche factory driver for Team Penske, to sit back and finish second. And I guess he felt like that he needed to make that move to get out front and go down the road. And as we saw, although Estre had the fresher Michelins compared to Nasr still had the pace and clean air, and there was nothing, Estre could do, there down the stretch. I mean, I do understand his frustration by the fact that he felt like that, he was going to be in position to win that race, that he was going to be on the right side of the team orders. But, for Felipe Nasr, he like I just said, he did what he felt like he needed to do to win the race and continue to cement his legacy in sports car racing. But I really feel like the majority of Kevin Estre's disappointment here is just frustration by the fact that he didn't win the race. These drivers are super competitive. They want to go out there and win as many races as they can. So I do understand why he's upset because he didn't win the race, but I don't understand why he's upset with Felipe Nasr, because I don't think Felipe did anything wrong. I think the fact that Felipe was able to get out front and clean air and pull away, and not hold them up, I think that everything is A-okay. I think if Felipe got out front, and then cost them both the win, then I think Kevin would probably have more of a reason to be upset. But I think this just really comes down to, the fact that he did not win the race, that he thought Felipe Nasr was going to, I guess, be a team player in this situation. But like Felipe said, he came here to win the race. He didn't come here to finish second. So, so I can't really fault Felipe Nasr for going for the win here. And plus, with the amount of caution they had, they were able to save enough fuel and energy to be able to make it to the end. Because I know at first, they wanted to save fuel. I didn't know how much, how long the yellows would be, because I thought they may have to come pit, but, ended up not being a factor, and everything was, A-okay in that situation.
Everything turned out to be A-okay. I have to agree with you. I think it's hard racing. It's one of those deals where everyone wants to get a win, and especially when you have races such as the Rolex 24, the Sebring 12 Hours, when we get to Long Beach, Watkins Glen, Petit Le Mans, iconic venues, iconic races. Anytime you're in the shot to get the win and it comes up short, there's a sense of frustration because it's going to be another 12 months until you could get that win at that venue. Now, one of the most impressive performances from the race came from Antonio Fuaku in the number 21 AF Course Ferrari. With less than 4 hours to go in the race, Fuaku's team received a drive-through penalty from race control and overcame all of it. At first, there was avoidable contact between him and the number 64 Ford Mustang. Then the next time, AF Course received another penalty for too many pit crew members over the wall. Then the third and final penalty was avoidable contact again, this time with the number 033 Triesari Competizione Ferrari. However, instead of folding, I don't know how, but Antonio and that team got up on the wheel and charged back to the front, passing the number 27 Heart of Racing team Aston Martin of Tom Gamble on the final lap. But Gamble made a mistake in turn number 10. Antonio Fuaku took the checker flag to the win in GTD alongside driver Lelou Wadu, female driver, and Simon Mann. How impressed were you by Antonio's ability to recover from 3 penalties to get the win in the final hours?
I have no idea. This is one of the craziest, who drives I've seen in quite a while in GT racing. The fact that he was able to recover from 3 major penalties. I mean, you think Joe won in the final, 1 penalty alone in the final hours, would really put you on the back foot and take you out of contention. And I do believe, some of the yellows we saw down the stretch, obviously helped him out as well. I think, some of it come down to those lucky breaks at the end where he was able to get the penalty, stay on the lead lap, and the timing of the caution, help close the field back up. But I don't want to take away from this drive from Antonio Fuaku. And it just shows, that this AF Corsa Ferrari was so fast that even, despite the adversity that they had to deal with, he was still able to claw his way back to the front because he was so fast. And, obviously the mistake there in turn 10 by Tom Gamble on the final lap helped out his case. But that was, quite a charge by Antonio Fuaku. The fact that you can overcome 3 different penalties and for infractions, 2 avoidable contact, and then too many men over the wall on another, have to come down pit road 3 different times. When you're not actually pitting to serve that penalty, and then to win the race, just absolutely remarkable, by him. And I saw Sports Car 365 asked him about his performance, and he said he believes it's one of his, I guess, his top 3 drives ever in his GT racing career, that he was even impressed with himself that he was able to bounce back from all of that. That's probably, going to be like a once in a blue moon type of thing where you get away with this, because I'm sure that if there's another race where he gets 3 penalties like this, Antonio Falco is probably not going to recover from it. I believe it's one of those rare instances where he was able to bounce back because all the circumstances with the cautions late in the race to help him out, and then the Ferrari just having a very fast car, and obviously favorite here in the BOP, as we see some cars work well at certain tracks better than others, but obviously the Ferrari was really hooked up here at Sebring. And also wanted to point out, there's co-driver Simon Mann, Lilo Wadu had great races as well. Really impressed with all the, endurance wins that Lilo Wadu is starting to stack up. And if she continues to do well at the GT level, hope Ferrari gives her a chance to drive in the hypercar class, because she's proven that she's more than deserving, especially since Ferrari extended her contract as a Ferrari factory driver.
That'll be a great opportunity for her. I still remember when covering her years ago on the Women in Motorsports program. So it'll be great to see how she could progress in her sports car career. Now, looking at some of the other class winners from the 12 Hours of Sebring, the number 2 United Autosports Orca 07 Gibson of Mikael Jensen, Hunter McElroy, and Phil Fayer won LMP2, while Porsche Good Sunday at Sebring continue after winning in GTP and GTD Pro, with a battle between 2 of the most popular liveries when it comes to sports car racing. We saw the number 911 Manti Racing Guerrero, Porsche 3911 GT3R of Thomas Prini, Klaus Bachler, and Ricardo Feller end up with the top spot in GTD Pro over AO Racing's number 77 Roxy Porsche. The team chose the pink livery for Sebring instead of the green one that most are filling with Rexy. And IMSA returns to competition the next time, April 18th, with GTD P and GTD heading to the streets of Long Beach. Cody, Long Beach is going to be a lot of fun, but everyone will be racing with heavy hearts in Long Beach, with the event's longtime CEO and president, Jim McCallion, passing away yesterday.
Yeah, Joe. That was some real surprising news that we got yesterday in the middle of the 12 Hours of Sebring. I know that broke into the coverage, to announce this. And I believe it might have been James Hinchcliffe. I think he posted on social media, or someone, who's affiliated with the IndyCar IMSA side of the world, said that they were just talking to Jim McCallion last week about the upcoming IMSA IndyCar doubleheader weekend at the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach next month in April. And it's really crazy, that they were just, someone was just talking to him about the event that he helped make so popular in the United States on the West Coast of California. And then, the next week he's gone. So on behalf of everyone at Grid Network, we're definitely going to be sending well wishes to Jim McCallion's family and friends during this difficult time, and may his memory be a blessing, because he did such an amazing job over the years, turning the Grand Prix of Long Beach into a crown jewel race on the IndyCar schedule, and just a crown jewel event in American motorsports, not just for IndyCar, for IMSA as well. Everyone wants to, come to Long Beach, and that's why when you see, IMSA GTP class and the GTD class, they're the only ones that are going to be at Long Beach. That's why you're seeing some GTD Pro teams who will come out, every year. Like, they'll drop down to GTD and change up their driver line just so they can come to Long Beach to show you how special event Jim McCallion and his staff have made this over the years. And also, Penske Entertainment also had bought the Grand Prix of Long Beach from Jim McCallion, so they could end up taking it over as Jim McCallion was getting older. Yeah, so definitely a sad loss here for the motorsports community. And now shifting gears, from IMSA, we're going to talk about the Brazilian Grand Prix, which returned to the MotoGP calendar this year for the first time in 22 years. And the weekend had 3 main storylines. First storyline, we have to talk about Marco Bezzecchi. He's the rider to beat for the World Championship this year, at least at this point, with his second consecutive Grand Prix win, and he extended his points lead. This is the second storyline. Don't count out Marc Marquez yet and his Ducati factory team, because Marquez ended up getting the sprint race win on Saturday, and he finished 4th in the Grand Prix today. And lastly, probably the main talking point from this weekend, the track conditions were a big issue. All in the last few days in Brazil, and a week before MotoGP showed up to Brazil, heavy rain, flooded the circuit, but all of the water was gone by the time the race weekend began. So that was a blessing there. However, after qualifying, a sinkhole formed on the main straight, leaving a significant hole in the track. It was filled and repaved to allow the race weekend to continue and set up for a smooth Sunday under sunny conditions. But less than 10 minutes before the Grand Prix, the race distance was shortened from 31 to 23 laps. The bikes were already full of fuel for 31 laps and tires for a 31-lap race, not 23. And we also saw the Ducati team principal was very unhappy with the late decision, given that they already set up the bikes for a longer race. But the track's asphalt and its ability to hold up, were major concern. So the officials felt like it was safe to err on the side of caution before we, really started running into issues. And actually after the race, I saw some photos from the MotoGP media. Some of the riders actually had pieces of asphalt that actually hit their arms during the race. Some of them had like bruises and stuff on their arms from the asphalt that was coming up. And time again, we've seen MotoGP schedule events on the calendar that end up never happening because the tracks were not ready to host motorcycle racing. Joe, does MotoGP need to do a better job of ensuring that these tracks are ready to host the premier motorcycle racing series in the world without delays or cancellation?
It's always important for MotoGP, and I'm pretty sure they always try to ensure when they schedule an event, it is up to their standard. The big problem is lately we've been getting a series of events where they say it's on the calendar, they're going to go there, but then something occurs and it doesn't happen. The first one that comes to mind was what happened with Kazakhstan. Twice it was on the calendar and twice we never made it there. We have Brazil. People were excited to be at this track. I know the weather plays a factor, and when you have such heavy rains and it gets flooded like that, you got to ask yourself, is this going to cause an impact with MotoGP and the race weekend? And what we saw was the track dried up. Okay, we could have the racing again. But particularly when that sinkhole showed up, it's like, that is a new one. And thank goodness that did not happen during a session. It was far enough off the racing line where it wasn't too big a concern when it popped up. But that was a scary thought. Just, okay, if it happened there, could a sinkhole occur somewhere else? What's the chances of that? And then track condition, the track degradation. We've heard this been talked about before in the past by MotoGP riders. And when we saw some of those photos of the asphalt coming up, when you hear a rider saying, hey, I'm getting hurt, I'm grateful that MotoGP did take their feedback from the reconnaissance lap and said, okay, this is becoming an issue. We need to shorten this race down. But still, it's not ideal for the fans coming in for a full race and they have to get a shorter race. I think still it was a good enough race where that wasn't a big negative. But for the teams, especially I feel for Ducati, they could have probably set up Marc Marquez just to be a little bit more better, to try to be a little bit more competitive. A lot of people were wondering if they had more time, how many teams would have switched to the soft tires, and that would have been really interesting to see what people could do with the soft tires versus the medium tires. Overall, I feel MotoGP, especially now that they got Liberty Media, there's going to be a lot more eyeballs. Liberty Media is going to want to elevate MotoGP to a higher level where they say, if you own a motorcycle, if you like motorcycle racing, this is the number one series internationally, globally for you. They want that. But now MotoGP has to be more mindful of the tracks. They're saying, yes, we'll come here. The tracks that have the best capacity, but also the ability to ensure the race weekend will go without a delay, without issues on the circuit. Because at the end of the day, that makes MotoGP look bad. I know people will say what happened in Brazil with the sinkhole was just something out of their control. Mother Nature had a role with that, with all the heavy rains. And I will give them that credit too. But this is not just a one-time in 5 or 6 years incident. This is, I feel, the latest. And I'm hoping MotoGP will just start looking more into what is their process for track approval, building that calendar. It should be something, a year-long effort to ensure that when they publish the 2027 calendar, the tracks there are going to be there. There's not going to be an issue of is that track ready? Not going to be an issue of will the track surface hold up? It's going to be who's going to win that race, because that's what everyone wants to be talking about. And just the fact that, can you imagine if for some reason that sinkhole was so big and it couldn't be run that weekend, and then the next weekend you're going to the United States, Circus of America, you're going to lose another round. And MotoGP has had plenty of rounds canceled over the last few years. I'm just hoping that MotoGP really takes this seriously and just, okay, we don't want to see a repeat of this incident occur. We need to just ensure when we go somewhere, they are truly ready for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, I think you did a good job documenting the long history of MotoGP, adding new races to the calendar that, they either end up never happening or they go there, and not completely prepared. And I guess this is, obviously the start of a new era with Liberty Media, taking over, we know under the previous regime, Dorna Sports, that all of this really happened under. So, Liberty, not off to a good start, in this area, though, I'm sure they want to break the reputation that Dorna Sports have had, with these issues, happening. But I remember on Grid Tonight months and months ago, we covered, MotoGP's return to Brazil. But the thing is, like, given how far out, in advance this was, like, why is the track having issues? Because I believe, when you're announcing an event, months and months out, or even like a year out, that you have plenty of time to make sure that everything is ready to go. And I do find the part that this is the main story of tonight, disappointing, because Marco Bezzecchi, he's absolutely wiping the competition after the first couple of race weekends this year. And I feel like, that Marco Bezzecchi in his early season dominance, should be celebrated more. But instead, we're talking about a racetrack that, that wasn't even ready by MotoGP standards. And I think heading into next year's race, assuming that this race is going to return next year, I think they need to spend the next calendar year working. Well, I don't know how many racing series are actually going to have at this track, but if they're able to do this without interrupting whatever may happen at this track, within the next year or so, I think they need to, figure something out to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Even if you have to do a complete repave to make sure that happens. I'm not sure if they have the funds to do that, but if I'm MotoGP, I'm moving heading over earth to make that happen. So when we come back next year, it'll be a better experience for all the riders, so we don't have to shorten the Grand Prix race. Today might have felt like a sprint race, in many respects, given, how quick it ended compared to some of the other MotoGP races, we've seen on the calendar. But I do think, that they need to put their heads together and make changes so that Brazil can be much better in 2027. And also for any other new tracks that they're going to for the very first time, to make sure that, that they're completely ready for it. And as Joe said, next weekend, MotoGP is coming here. They're going to be at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas for the Red Bull Grand Prix of the United States. And Marc Marquez, he's known as the King of COTA. Everyone will be wondering if he can keep that title, King of COTA, or Marco Bezzecchi make it 3 consecutive Grand Prix race wins to start off the 2026 season. And now moving on to Formula E, the ABB FIA Formula E World Championships Madrid E-Prix at Jarama drew a big crowd for the inaugural event at the natural road course in Spain. It was a single race weekend for Formula E and Antonio Felix da Costa, his second win of the 2026 season, in back-to-back victories with a 1-2 finish for Jaguar TCS Racing as well. But it wasn't all cheers and smiles at Jaguars. Mitch Evans was visibly upset at his teammate for how he was raced. Evans started 16th and worked his way to the front and made it to second place with a couple laps remaining. Da Costa made some defensive moves, but didn't seem to cross the line of unsafe illegal blocking. The two even chatted afterwards and were not thrilled riding the golf cart back to the podium together. And there's the shot right there of the two Jaguar teammates. That was definitely one of the most memorable moments when I watched this event yesterday afternoon. Evans even claimed that he had the fastest car, that he should have been allowed to pass, and just run away with the race win. But Da Costa, he started third, led the race, and Evans was told to hold his position by the team, according to Jack Benyon from the race. This is Da Costa's first year with Jaguar, while Evans has been with Jaguar his entire Formula E career. Joe, when we were putting together the script for the show, I actually had to look to see how long he's been with Jaguar. I'm really surprised that Mitch Evans has been with Jaguar for almost a decade. It doesn't seem like Jaguar's been in Formula E for almost a decade. And the first race that Mitch Evans raced with Jaguar was back on October 9th, 2016 in the Hong Kong Prix, which no longer exists. So Jaguar has been in this sport for an almost entire decade now, coming this October. And that was the very first race Mitch Evans was at as a Formula E driver. So Mitch Evans and Jaguar have been around for quite a while now. And this is the only team that he knows in Formula E. And then after the race that we're talking about, the incident between Da Costa and Evans, and in regards to Evans, I said there are some rumors that he could be going to the Porsche camp next season and leaving Jaguar after all these years. I'm not sure if they're talking about the actual Porsche Formula E team or the second Porsche team, that's coming next year, because I know next year Porsche is going to have a similar setup to like Red Bull and Racing Bulls, where you have your Porsche team and then basically you have your B Porsche team. So that was very interesting that they made those comments, on the actual Formula E broadcast. So my question for you is, were Mitch Evans' claims valid, or is this just a sign of frustration now that he has a teammate in Antonio Felix da Costa with a championship who can take the fight to him?
My opinion, I feel his claim is not valid. Just because he came from the back to the front, but your teammate who started up front and worked his way to get the lead, maintain the lead, play the strategy well, and have a solid car, he wasn't bunching up everyone to the point where it was becoming a situation where he could lose the lead and a position for Mitch Evans. That was not the case at all. In my opinion, Antonio Felix da Costa ran a smart race, a great race with everything he did right. And Formula E, you don't want to get too far because everyone's just going to be drafting you. Battery management is the big thing. Mitch Evans, yes, he's been in Formula E for a long time, but this is a very different Jaguar team. You have a new team principal. The team principal from the first race up till the end of last year is gone. You no longer have teammates that have 0 championships. Because even when Nick Cassidy came here, people thought he was going to be the next championship contender. Those two seem to race each other well, but at the end of the day, Cassidy never claimed that championship. Well, now you have a situation where you got a deal where when it comes to Antonio Felix da Costa, he is a past champion. He now has more wins than you this season. I could understand the frustration, and my opinion is there might be some bitterness between Mitch Evans and the direction of this team under the new leadership, because with the new leadership, there's going to be changes. Things that have been done before are going to change. And the fact that Mitch Evans anticipated, I should have gotten this, feels more like the vibe of this was a number 1 driver and a number 2 driver situation, where the number 1 driver is the championship favorite. The number 2 driver is just somebody new, somebody that's lower in the championship, but it's still very early. I mean, we're talking 6 out of 17 races are done. Antonio Felix da Costa has overcome a dreadful start. And let's remember, it wasn't too long ago. After the first couple of races, Jaguar was at 0 points. So they have changed it. They have turned things around. I mean, 3rd and 4th for the two of them, only 1 point separating them. At the end of the day, the fact that it's becoming more and more open that he's looking at potentially going to Porsche makes me think maybe Mitch Evans is already thinking about life beyond Jaguar. He's been there long enough, just about 10 years. Multiple times he's been second in the championship. The most heartbreaking one was that year where we ended it at Berlin. He had the pole. He was on the front row. He was the championship leader, but his car did not move, and he got drilled in the back by Eduardo Montoya, ruining both of their championship hopes, and that essentially paved the way for someone else to claim the championship that year. I see this as a situation where Mitch Evans, he's been there long enough, but this is not the team that he's always been familiar with. There's changes going on that team. And he is not going to be the number 1 driver. And I think he knows that. He has to make the case, as he always does, that he should get the best strategy, the best opportunity to win. But when your teammate is doing everything they need to do to win a race, including a better qualifying effort to go from third to first, that's great. You came from 16th to second. But they're not going to say, hey, you're going to get around your teammate because you're just that much faster. This is Formula E. You're not really going to pull away because everyone's going to start drafting you. At the end of the day, I think they're not valid. His points, Mitch Evans, and I think this is just one of those deals where for Jaguar, they just have to remind the team's drivers it's about the team. This isn't about a preferred driver. This isn't about a number one driver, a number two driver. This is about what's going to get us to victory. And we made the call, hold your position, to ensure that we finish 1-2. Yes, I know Dan Tickton was behind Mitch Evans, not making life easy for him. But that's racing. And this is motorsports. People could agree and disagree all they want about team orders. But I feel Jaguar, they utilize it in the best way possible to ensure first place and second place.
John, I actually want to ask you a quick follow-up question on this. Like, I know we already talked about team orders earlier in the show. So when you look at the Mitch Evans and Antonio Felix da Costa situation, like, how do you compare and contrast this one in Formula E compared to what we saw with Felipe Nasr and Kevin Estre and in the IMSA race at Sebring?
Yeah, that was the funny part because I was thinking about that as we were going through the IMSA stuff and just thinking about, oh, this is very similar to what we're seeing in Jaguar. It's interesting when it comes to team orders because I know fans generally don't like team orders. They want to see racing. But I think there's also a group of fans out there that do get upset when team orders are not obeyed. And you have a situation where a driver appears to have broken team orders. I remember the best example I could think of was when Max Verstappen ignored team orders, getting around Sergio Perez in Brazil for a position. And Perez ended up short of getting second in the championship in the drivers that year to Leclerc. That was the difference. And people were just all over saying how Perez has been a good teammate. And Max Verstappen didn't obey the orders where Perez roles reverse would have. But that's part of racing too, that if you're the number one driver, if you're a good enough driver, you could get away with breaking the team orders. Verstappen didn't really face much. They may have told him something away from the public, but he was still his normal self. Of course, Red Bull with Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber, who went on to be the champion? Vettel. In the case of IMSA, Felix Nasr, he wanted to get that second win in a row. He wanted to do that. And if he felt like, hey, I could get around, I'm going to go for it. And he did. In this case, Mitch Evans, he obeyed the team orders. That was how he wants to race. He did it. But I can only imagine if we have a situation, roles reversed, and it's Antonio Felix da Costa. If Antonio Felix da Costa obeys the team orders, holds his position behind Mitch Evans, they're going to move on from this. But if for some reason that doesn't happen and team orders are broken, Mitch Evans is going to be very upset. And that awkward golf cart ride is going to be even more awkward if that was another situation for the win. So overall, I think team orders was what we saw in IMSA and Formula E. A lot of similarities. But again, it just comes down to how the drivers, I think as Kevin said, educate themselves and sort of respect the rule that team orders are team orders. You follow them because in the case of Penske Porsche, it appears Nasr wanted to go for the win and figured I'm going to do it. Let's see what happens with him. In the case of Mitch Evans, he didn't do it, but he's hoping he's going to get that respect if roles are reversed.
Yeah, and if Mitch Evans was so frustrated with the team for telling him to stay put, he should have did what Felipe Nasr did. Just go take the win and be like, well, it'd be like how I'm on the top step of the podium, then we deal with the consequences later. I feel like in a situation like that, if Mitch Evans had gone for the win and they still get a Jaguar 1-2, I think obviously Antonio Felix da Costa would have been frustrated knowing the team order there, but at the same time, you still get a Jaguar 1-2, so it's like really no harm, no foul, this early in the game. But if Mitch Evans wants to ignore team order, end up crashing him and Antonio Felix da Costa out of the race, that's when it becomes a problem, within the team. So it's definitely quite a risk, whether you're going to, whether you try to disobey the team order or not. And I guess like you say, Joe, in the Kevin Estre's Instagram post, which is still up, he said that he was educated that you respect the team and what they say. And I guess in this situation, Mitch Evans, I guess he got the same education that Kevin Estre did, which is to respect the team in this situation, whether it's good or bad. And in this case, Mitch Evans ended up on the wrong end of things, but it was good for Antonio Felix da Costa to get this win, because this is as close as he's going to get to having a home E-Prix. Because Antonio Felix da Costa is from Portugal. Portugal is right next to Spain. And if you look at Formula E social media handle, Antonio Felix da Costa, he slowed down on a part of the track because he had a lot of family and friends, that they're there to see him race. And this is basically a home win for Antonio. So you're a really big deal for him to win in front of so many family and friends who may not be able to go to other Formula E races. And it's definitely going to be interesting to continue to follow this situation between the Jaguar teammates throughout the rest of this Formula E season. We'll see if this was just a one-off this season or if things could explode into something much bigger, later on. And Joe also wanted to throw one other thing out there, about Mitch Evans and, his time with Jaguar potentially coming to an end. If this is if it is a small sample, of his frustration, being with the team. Another thing you have to consider, when he first started at Jaguar almost 10 years ago, who was his boss? It was James Barkley, who was the longtime team principal of Jaguar. And, James is now gone from Jaguar. He left to go take over the McLaren Hypercar project in the FIA World Endurance Championship. And his new boss is the former McLaren Formula E team principal, Ian James. And, James Barkley, has always, been in the ear of Mitch Evans. And now this is a new guy, Ian James. We obviously, don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but you a lot of times you get used to having that same voice, hovering above you and in your ear all throughout the time. And maybe Ian James, being the team principal, maybe him and Mitch Evans are just not a good fit, like boss and employee.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The chemistry and the team could be something that's getting a little frustrating for Mitch Evans if he feels like I could do more, and you guys are not doing that for me. Maybe I'll start considering leaving, which that would be something else for Mitch Evans to say, "Hey, I'm going to take my services to Porsche." I mean, Porsche, if that second team has him in a rookie and he's cleared the number one driver and that's what he really wants, the opportunity is there for you. But if you go to the main team and your teammate's going to be Pascal Wehrlein, another champion, who's, by the way, the current points leader, you're not going to be the number one driver. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the season develops and the relation between James over at Jaguar and Mitch Evans.
Yeah. And sometimes you just spend too long at an organization, and it's time to move on. So that could very well be it. While they've had a successful run together, this last decade or so in Formula E, sometimes you spend too much time at the same organization, and it's just time, for a new challenge. So maybe that'll be it for Mitch Evans, and sure we'll follow that as we get into the Formula E silly season, which is still probably a handful of months away. And you mentioned Joe, championship leader Pascal Wehrlein. He finished third at Madrid, and he has an 11-point lead over Eduardo Mortara, who finished fifth. Evans is 1 point ahead of Da Costa and Nick Cassidy, who finished 17th, despite starting on pole. That was a really strange race by Nick Cassidy. I must say, started on pole, looked good at first, and then something went wrong with the pit boost, and then he lost a lot of positions there, and then I have no idea what happened to him in the last lap. He just kind of faded. I'm not sure if you caught what happened to Nick Cassidy, Joe, but it was just a really strange incident.
A strange incident? It just seems like pit boost just staying out too long, and where other drivers were able to move their way to the front. Just nothing from Nick Cassidy, which is just a huge disappointment. I mean, especially from pole to nothing. And you had a driver like Antonio Felix da Costa, who played it all right, third to the win. That's baffling to see how that all did not work out for Nick Cassidy.
Yeah, for sure. And he'll try to put this one, out of the memory bank, because we're now 6 races down on a 17 race calendar for 2026. And the next race weekend is the Berlin Prix, which is a doubleheader in early May. Felipe Drukovic and Lucas Di Grassi, as you can see down there at the bottom of the points, 18th and 19th in the standing respectively. They're the only two drivers who have not scored points this year in Formula E. Lucas Di Grassi used to be, one of the big names of the series, contender for the championship year in and year out. I wonder if Father Time is just starting to show his head with Lucas Di Grassi that it's time for him to move on from Formula E. Although I've seen him in the media making comments how he wants to continue to race, in Formula E in the future, and also being with the, with the Lola project there, not really, he doesn't really have the best equipment on the grid right now, so that could also be playing a factor as well. Felipe Drugovic, I feel like he's shown some potential early on in his Formula E career, but just hasn't been able to convert it into a points finish so far. And those two drivers, they could very well be eliminated from title contention in Berlin, depending on how the race results go in that doubleheader. And we're almost out of time for the night, so it's time for our great one shining moment from this racing weekend. So if you're watching here live or on replay, let us know what's the one thing that stood out to you based on all the racing we saw this weekend around the world, whether it was from NASCAR at Darlington, IMSA at Sebring, MotoGP in Brazil, or Formula E in Madrid, Spain. So Joe, I'll start off with you. What's your great one shining moment?
My shining moment is going to come from MotoGP, and it's going to be Aprilia. What Marco Beschecchi has done has really impressed me. First race of the year, the sprint race, he gets the pole, and he crashed out. And I thought, okay, he may not be exactly up to the game he needs to be to beat Marc Marquez. But then he responded and won that race. We come into this race weekend. Again, it's fast. He finishes the sprint race. He keeps the points, putting pressure on Pedro Acosta, the points leader. Then, after the sprint race, the Grand Prix just ran away, unstoppable, and he is looking fast. What he has gotten going for him at the start of the races, that is the big difference. He just looks like the rider to beat now. Didn't fall towards the back, didn't do anything wrong, and even pulled away from his teammate, a past MotoGP champion, Jorge Martin, who is now starting to look much better compared to his disastrous 2025 season, worst showing of any past champion, defending champion of MotoGP in recent years. For him to come out second place, he looks happy. It still boggles my mind that he wants to leave Aprilia, but rumors are there might already be a deal for next year involved with Aprilia. He has to look at somebody else, potentially Yamaha. And the day, though, 1-2 finish. Aprilia has to be feeling really good that they brought a rocket of a bike for this year's MotoGP championship, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a runaway anytime soon. So Aprilia, that is my shining moment.
And my shining moment has to go to the number 45, 2311 racing team of Tyler Reddick in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's amazing, how far this not just the 20 not just the 45 team, but 2311 Racing Journal have come since last year. No Tyler Reddick, went winless last year, and many people were wondering like what on earth happened to Tyler Reddick in 2025, that this was not the same team that saw before in 2024. And I believe that this is the best version of Tyler Reddick that we've seen, so far in his NASCAR Cup Series career. And it's amazing, just 6 races into the Cup Series season and all of that. Still very early on, and Tyler Reddick has won 4 of them. That's almost unheard of in modern day NASCAR to see, a driver, this dominant, especially so early in the season. And it'll be interesting to see if he can keep this up, throughout the season, if he can be dominant throughout the whole year, get into the chase and end up claiming the championship at the end of the day. Because traditionally we'll see drivers start off strong. Remember, last year saw Christopher Bell win 3 in a row, and then he kind of fell off. So we'll see if that 45 team can keep it rolling. But considering everything Tyler Reddick had to go through, today with some voltage issues, running into the back of Chris Buescher, and he and also I believe he had like a hiccup on pit road earlier in the race as well. So despite all of that, his car was so fast, he was able to overcome all of that. And this has been quite remarkable to see, one team, dominate in the early part of the NASCAR season like that. It's almost like Max Verstappen levels of dominance we've seen sometime in Formula One. And I guess in our pick a winner for the next, handful of races, might see a lot of people trending towards the number 45 because this has been, remarkably strong. And also, whenever Tyler Reddick wins, 2311 wins, NASCAR wins as well because Michael Jordan owns the team, and Michael Jordan is one of those figures who can transcend the sport, into an entire different dimension. And whenever one of his drivers wins, you're going to see in the mainstream media, Michael Jordan's team wins again in NASCAR. And that's always a good thing whenever you're connected to Michael Jordan because he brings the sport some really great publicity.
Great publicity for NASCAR and, of course, motorsports in general. Definitely is going to be really fun to see if they could continue that for the rest of the Cup Series season. And, of course, we're going to be continuing our coverage throughout 2026. Subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss Grid Rising tomorrow. They're going to recap the Truck Series, the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, plus Supercross, lot from Tanner and Matthew. And a big thank you to our investors calling the show: Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, Nico. Gloria is an investor through YouTube membership. We have a paid membership option as well as a free one. So click on that membership button if you want to also get your name on the leaderboard on the paid investors, helping us get to the track, helping us stay on the air. Of course, one-time investment through Super Chats and Buy Me a Coffee. Jason leads the leaderboard with 3 this season. And a big thank you again to everyone for tuning in for Grid Live Wrap-Up. We'll be back next weekend as we got even more racing. For Kobe Lambeth, I'm Joe Samaniego. I encourage everyone, gridnetworktv.com for Matthew Bro's article later on. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.